Antibiotic Awareness Week. This year, Zambia, under the National Antimicrobial Resistance Coordinating Committee, has arranged various, and I mean various events to commemorate this week. This year's week did fall from the 18th to the 22nd of November. Now, as part of commemoration of this week, the Zambia National Antimicrobial Resistance Coordinating Committee has come and has scheduled this debate. Now, this debate has been going on from the start of last week, and we did have 8 teams participating in this debate. At the beginning, we had Kablongo Boys Secondary School, Cavendish University, Evelyn Horn College, the University of Lusaka, Mnali Community Team, Presso University, and Lusaka Apex Medical University, as well as Unza Ridgeway Campus School of Medicine. Now, after running through the course of the debate, we here now have 2 teams. On my right, I have the University of Zambia Ridgeway Campus. On my left, I have the Lusaka Apex Medical University. Now, these teams will today debate the motion, overuse and misuse of antibiotics in the veterinary and agriculture sector is the major cause of antibiotic resistance. The University of Zambia Ridgeway Campus, on my right, is the government. They are the team proposing to this motion. On my left, Lusaka Apex Medical University is the opposition, and hence are opposing to this motion. And now, with that said, shall we begin? My name is Harvey Gambua, and I am the moderator. So now, call upon the first speaker from the government, Chuluba Songiwe T.
From the retina to the optic nerve, from the optic nerve to the optic chiasm, from the optic chiasm to the lateral geniculate nucleus, from the lateral geniculate nucleus, finally to the occipital lobe of the brain. Members of the house, vision is a journey. And just like every journey, it begins with the first step. And the first step being finding the major cause of antimicrobial resistance. In this case, it is the overuse, misuse of antibiotics in the veterinary and agricultural sector. We will take you on the journey from pathway to pathway. The motion that states, and I quote, misuse and overuse of antibiotics in the veterinary and agricultural sectors is the major cause of antimicrobial resistance. End of quotation. Before I proceed, allow me to acknowledge the presence of the following people in this auditorium. The chairperson, the panel of adjudicators, need I say, all protocol observed. Members of the House, seeing that I'm the first speaker from the government, it is my duty to simplify the motion, and I will do this by defining the key terms as according to the Stedman Medical Dictionary. May this please be passed on to the judges. According to the Stedman Medical Dictionary, misuse means use of something in the wrong way or for the wrong reason. Overuse means using something too much or too often. Antimicrobials are substances that kill or inhibit growth of microscopic pathogens. The veterinary sector is the field concerned with the diseases and health of animal species other than human beings. The agricultural sector has to do with farming, including growing plants and rearing animals. Major means largest or of the most importance. And to paraphrase this motion, using antibiotics too much or for the wrong reasons in plants and animals is the most important or number 1 cause of antimicrobial resistance. End of quotation. As the government, to tackle the motion before us, we have divided our strategy into 3. First of all, I as the first speaker will talk about overuse of these antibiotics in the agricultural sector. The second speaker will talk about misuse of these antibiotics in plants and animals. And the third speaker will talk about the veterinary sector. Our fourth speaker, our president, our summarizer will come and cement the points brought up by the three speakers. Overuse, members of the House, allow me to show just to what extent the overuse of antibiotics is in the agricultural sector by quoting from an article by WHO entitled "Stop Using Antibiotics in Healthy Animals to Prevent the Spread of AMR." Begin of quotation. In some countries, approximately 80%, members of the House, of the total consumption of medically important antibiotics is by animals, largely for growth promotion. May this evidence please be passed on. This is also the case in the United States of America. Look at this illustration, members of the House. More than two times the antibiotics used in the human sector are used in the animal sector. How then can we stand here and say the agricultural sector is not the main cause, members of the House? Even the food Even the FDA, the Food and Drug Agency, alludes to this. According to the FDA, 80% of the total antibiotics in the USA are used in agriculture, with pigs, poultry getting more than 10 times compared to cattle and sheep. Why is this so rampant, members of the House? In order to meet the demand of meat products, members of the House. Affiliates, I do agree. Meat is very important.
Mr. Chairperson, sir, may it be stated to the House to say 0.1% of the total usage of antibiotics are the only percent that is used in plant health. How then are we going to say 0.1 is the major cause of antibiotic resistance?
Affiliates of the session, the motion does not only talk about plants, but rather talks about plants and animals. Let us be concise, members of the House. Allow me to continue. Affiliates, meat is cardinal, and this I agree. But is it enough to sacrifice our lives over? Certainly not. This is only destined to get worse, members of the House. According to Dr. Kiaski of the Food...
Time up. You have 5 seconds.
Allow me to end by saying, members of the auditorium, the strongest muscle at Ridgeway campus has spoken, and now it is up to you to seek advice or pay the price.
The panelists here with us, we have judges to help keep and maintain the highest level of debate. Now with us, the first judge is Chris Angalo. The second judge is Matthews Chakulanta Jr. The third judge is Frank Nathan Mulanga. And the power of veto, the fourth judge, falls to Ms. Otrida Kapoda. And now, we go to call the first speaker from Lusaka Apex Medical University. The first speaker from Lusaka Apex Medical University is Luito Zulimba.
Every year, Zambia joins the rest of the world in commemorating the World Antibiotic Awareness Week, which falls in the month of November. This year's theme was, "The future of antibiotics depends on us." We are a third world nation not because we don't know what we're doing, not because the first president is still alive, but because our government has chosen to overlook and mislead the nation by saying overuse and misuse of antibiotics in the veterinary and agriculture sector is the major cause of antibiotic resistance. Mr. Chairperson, sir, allow me to follow the order of protocol as outlined by the Prime Minister of the government by saying, "Oh, protocol behind." It is my obligation to redefine the motion according to the intellect of the opposition party. Mr. Chairperson, sir, may it be within my jurisdictions that I borrow all definitions passed by the government, Prime Minister, and hence allow me to educate the House to say the movement being passed by the government is as follows. We are saying, or they are saying to say, the makers of sweet wrappers are the major causes of diabetes. Allow me to enlighten you. They are trying to say that the misuse, the excessive use of these drugs that are used to kill kill bacteria, is the sole and the major cause of the resistance we are seeing. Mr. Chairperson, sir, allow me hence to give you a blueprint and an overlook of our argument as the opposition. First, we shall answer the question why we feel and why we think veterinary and agricultural sector misuse and overuse of antibiotics has got very few and very less impact on antimicrobial resistance. Then, Mr. Chairperson, sir, we shall bring to the floor of this House, hence, the major factors and the major causes of antimicrobial resistance. Then, as the opposition, we are here to provide checks and balances. We shall, for the love of the people and the honorable countrymen and women, give to you recommendations and solutions as to how we can handle antimicrobial resistance other than blaming the overuse and misuse of the veterinary and agriculture sector. Mr. Chairperson, sir, with me, allow me to give you a blueprint and basis of our argument. First, we shall bring to you the regulation sector, as strict as it is of this vet and the agriculture sector. Then we shall bring to your attention how much of the antibiotics in the world are used to plant health in the agriculture sector. Then we shall bring to you the minimum usage of antibiotics in plant health and in these sectors. Mr. Chairperson, sir, we shall proceed to bring to your attention the increase of infection rate in the humans as opposed into the animals. Then we shall bring to you the accessibility and the poor implementation of regulations on antibiotic usage in the human health. Then, Mr. Chairperson, we shall bring to your attention the high toxicity in the environment as the major cause of the natural phenomenon we are talking about, which is antimicrobial resistance. Honorable Mr. Chairperson, sir. Then we shall bring to you the regulations and the recommendations that we feel are going to help the nation and the country, men and women, on how we can handle antimicrobial resistance. Mr. Chairperson, sir, allow me to enlighten you. Out of everything, every antibiotic that is produced, where do this go? Everything is taken to the environment. Hence, we cannot call a sequel to be the major, because there is always a gatekeeper between the misuse and overuse of antibiotics in the veterinary section to antimicrobial resistance. What do we mean? What we are trying to say here is that a sequel can never be the major cause. What we are saying here is that the environment has the major and sole cause of antimicrobial resistance. Secondly, we are trying to say the human health facility and the human health sector is the second major cause of antimicrobial resistance. It shall be outlined to you how the human health sector has contributed majorly to antimicrobial resistance and how few of the impact the misuse and overuse of antibiotics has been in the veterinary has been observed.
May the speaker please pause.
From a WHO extract. In human medicine, 3,400 tons of antibiotics were sold in a total of 26 countries. But more than twice this amount was used in animals, which was 8,000 tons. How then can we not blame the animals and replenish them as they have?
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of the government. But may I step to say we are being led by the Zambian National Public Health Institute. Hence, it is imperative that we first consider our nation before it goes further into the world. May I have 15 seconds to summarize?
Allowed.
Thank you. What I was saying is, charity begins at home. We shall not bring to you statistics of India, statistics of China, and leave the mother Zambia. May this be passed to the judges for further adjudication, as this cements my position and our position as the opposition party. Thank you, and I submit.
And that was the first speaker from Apex Medical University, Luito Sulimba. And now, to call upon the second speaker from the government, Mianda Jonathan.
Before I begin, allow me to state that all pieces of information and evidence are placed here, and therefore I'll just quote. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that powerful call. Members of the House, allow me to observe debate etiquette by simply saying, all protocol be highly observed. I stand to propose to the motion as simplified by our first speaker, and I'm particularly interested in the words misuse of antibiotics and to relate to how exactly this misuse is most notable in the agricultural sector, members of the House, and that this being the major cause of antimicrobial resistance. I will simply start by stating to say, the proper use of antibiotics is to kill or inhibit microbes that are actually disease-causing, members of the House. But we live in an era where, right now, there is an increase in demand for meat protein, pushing the farmers to resort to crooked ways, members of the House, to try to meet this demand and make a profit for himself, members of the House. May I quote from a quotation from the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the quote begins, I begin the quote. The term antibiotic growth promoter is used to describe any medicine that destroys or inhibits bacteria and is administered at a sub-therapeutic dose, not that word, sub-therapeutic dose, in pursuit for growth rather than human health, members of the House. This is happening in the animal sector, and it says that we are no longer using antibiotics simply for infections, members of the House. Now we're using antibiotics what? As growth promoters, members of the House. My previous speaker actually said to say, we are consuming more antibiotics in the animal sector. How then are we going to say it's not the major cause of antimicrobial resistance? Members of the House, they are administering these chemicals sub-therapeutically. What that means is, it's going to cause antimicrobial resistance. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I've heard this saying go around. And it's particularly true with antimicrobial resistance. Members of the House, allow me to quote a sword over the counter and are being used to boost animal growth and not for treatment of infections in animals, members of the House. Let me tell you, I'm a very tall person.
May the speaker please pause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Allow me to quote this extract from internet. It reads as I articulate. Most of the antibiotics used is excreted in the feces and urine in an active form. Mr. Chairperson, sir, may I enlighten the House to the meat before it is eaten. It is checked by the environmental health whether it contains antibiotics or not. Furthermore, this is a meat that...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members of the House, the Speaker just said that it is excreted. Who is excreting? The animal sector is excreting these things, members of the House, and then they go into the environment. We cannot blame the environment for this particular crisis because it's the animals that are excreting these things into the environment. May I continue, members of the House? I was talking about my height. I am very tall, but never in my life have I ever used antibiotics to get to this stage. But antibiotics are used in the animal sector, members of the house. How then are we going to blame the human sector that they are causing antimicrobial resistance? May I continue? This quote is from the World Health Organization. It says, and as I articulate, stop using antibiotics on healthy animals to prevent the spread of resistance. End of quotation, members of the house. It means to say if we stop using these antibiotics,
You have 15 seconds.
if we stop using these antibiotics in the animal sector, we will stop the spread. It doesn't say the human sector, members of the house. This clearly shows to you that the biggest problem World Health Organization recognizes is in the animal sector. I do not give information from my mind. I give information of evidence. Wherever you are as a farmer, please listen to this information and contemplate, for our country is headed for a crisis.
Members of the auditorium, that was me and Jonathan, the second speaker from the University of Zambia, Ridgeway campus. And I'll call upon the second speaker from Lusaka Apex Medical University, Vida Kabaza.
Antibiotics in the veterinary and agriculture sector is a major cause of antibiotic resistance. End of quote. Now, as we must render Caesar what belongs to Caesar, allow me to observe all protocol. Now, I stand in full opposition to the motion that I stated earlier. Why? Members of the House, we should know that the veterinary and agriculture sector is well regulated. Members of the House, reality speaking, how many pharmacies or rather health facilities or centers do we know that offer animal medicine compared to the mushrooming pharmacies and drugstores that dispense human medicine? Members of the House, this is not a major issue in the agriculture and veterinary sector. To proceed, the proposing government came on stage and said that this meat leads to high resistance of antibiotics. But members of the House, who in this world ever eats raw meat?
Point of
interjection, Mr. Chairperson.
May the speaker please pause.
Members of the House and affiliates of this session, I will not allow the opposition to mislead the nation. Members of the House, allow me to quote from the top major Zambian media outlets, and I begin the quote. The Veterinary Association of Zambia said it was unfortunate that the government has failed to put in place a council in the past 3 years to regulate the profession, adding that poses health risks to the citizen. The Veterinary Association of Zambia, members of the House, says there's no council in the veterinary sector. However, there's a council in the human sector and SPCZ. Where is the council in the veterinary sector?
I will progress, members of the House. And as I was saying, there is total regulation because this is done on a much more larger scale compared to the human health sector. Now, to show that I'm not speaking from without, what then is the major cause leading to this antibiotic resistance? Number one, nosocomial infections. Now, these are infections that are acquired when you go to the hospital. Now, just to show that I'm not speaking from without, a survey that was done in the major hospitals in Lusaka and Dola were discovered that out of 132 swabs, 60%, 86%, 76%, and 95% of the drugs of bacteria were found to be resistant to these antibiotics. Now, members of the House, my very own friend got tuberculosis simply because he went to visit his admitted mother in the hospitals. Now, this is one thing we should be worried about when you go to the hospital and come back with an infection. This is what we should channel our worry. To furthermore prove my point, members of the House, what we should be worried about instead is the inappropriate use of the antibiotics in the human health sector. What am I talking about? Broad spectrum antibiotics that are used, that are administered to us. Now, members of the auditorium, when you go to the hospital facility and go with your signs and symptoms, these people will not bother isolate the bacteria, but they will administer a broad spectrum which will kill both positive and negative bacteria. Now, if the bacterium is...
Time up.
To summarize.
You have 10 seconds.
Thank you so much. Now, this will kill the positive and the weaker bacteria will continue to survive and be resistant. Aside from that, inappropriate use such as not finishing your course, this will lead to antimicrobial resistance, and this is what you should worry about. Members of the House, think twice, seek advice, or indeed pay the price. May this evidence be passed on to show that we don't speak fiction, but rather facts.
And that was Vida Kabaza, the second speaker of Lusaka Apex Medical University. And now to call upon the third speaker from the University of Zambia, Ridgeway campus, Muyembe Jibotu.
The use of antibiotics in either the animal, agricultural, or environmental sector inappropriately, unnecessarily, disproportionately, or irrelevantly is potentially signing a death warrant for the patient. Mr. Speaker, before I give the exegesis of my discourse this afternoon, it is only debate etiquette that I state that all protocol observed. Just as legitimate and bona fide as it is that we feel that we fall sick and die, so it is in the animal kingdom. And who else but the farmer falls prey to the nerve-breaking, heart-breaking, mind-blowing torture of losing something beloved. For this reason, farmers and others with livestock go to great lengths to secure the health of their animals. Tragically, these great lengths include the treatment of disease and prevention of possible outbreaks with increasingly huge amounts of antibiotics. Members of the House, this overuse of antibiotics in the animal sector is the leading cause of antimicrobial resistance. This is because the high proportion of the drugs are used. This is because the high proportion of the drugs used are of poor quality, exposing bacteria to low subtherapeutic levels that will not kill them but cause genetic mutations and hence enhance their mechanism of survival and lead the production of drug-resistant bacteria and hence antimicrobial resistance. To show that I'm not speaking from without but from within, allow me to quote a document published by the World Health Organization on antimicrobial resistance in livestock and poor quality veterinary medicines. That states, and I quote, "The high proportion of poor quality veterinary medicines for therapeutic use in livestock compounds the problem of antibiotic overuse." Skip quote. Poor quality veterinary medicines, particularly at subtherapeutic doses, can allow resistant microbes to flourish. May you please pass this on to the judges for further verification. Secondly, there is an increase in the misuse and overuse of antibiotics by vegetarians.
Speaker, please pause.
Mr. Chairperson, sir, with the subtherapeutic doses, may the Speaker enlighten the House how much % of these antibiotic residues is found in the meat as to why we would say it is the major cause of antibiotic resistance?
Thank you. Right now, I may not give you the exact facts or rather percentages that you want, but we do know that these subtherapeutic doses do cause genetic mutations that enhance mechanisms of survival and hence lead to antimicrobial resistance. A study showed, as stipulated in the Zambia National Public Health Institute on antimicrobial resistance, that 28% of veterinarians prescribed antibiotics for fear of losing their clients. Members of the House, some may wish to state that this is a small number in comparison with the larger 72%. Let me remind you, House of Intellectuals, that the huge dynamites come in small packages. It is this 28% that is bullied into giving free access of antibiotics to farmers and other livestock owners, creating a breeding ground for antimicrobial resistance. The study further stipulated that veterinarians prescribed antibiotics to treat viral infections. Please allow me 15 seconds to conclude.
We have 10 seconds.
In conclusion, the dark ages of antimicrobial resistance are soon to be upon us. The days so dreaded are slowly encroaching, and it is our duty to think twice, seek advice, or pay the price. Thank you.
The third speaker from the government, Unza Ridgeway Campus. Now to call upon the third speaker from Lusaka Apex Medical University, the opposition, Alfred Ngozo.
They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I'm here to tell you, the antimicrobial resistance is here to kill each and every one of us if we continue to ignore the major cause of antibiotic resistance. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to the motion that has already been well articulated by the previous 5 speakers. I won't waste time but go straight into articulating my points. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to state why we, the opposition, are not saying this is the major cause of antibiotic resistance. Members of this Linguistic Council, when we say veterinary, one thing we need to understand is not all animals under the veterinary are consumed by humans. Members of this Linguistic Council, what effect does a dog or a cat being given antibiotics for disease prevention and treatment have an effect on me? Definitely not. Nothing, members of this Linguistic Council. And then the other thing, the agriculture sector as being the major cause. Members of this Linguistic Council, one thing we need to understand is that only 2 antibiotics are used in the agriculture sector. This is streptomycin and streptococcus. These are the only 2 antibiotics that are used. And then you are telling us it is the major.
May the speaker please pause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Picarian speaker tells us that not all animals are consumed. But members of the House, have we heard of Toxocara canis? It comes from dogs, and do we eat dogs? Definitely not. Thank you.
Members of this linguistic council, do not be misled. I said a dog given antibiotics to treat the same disease they are talking about. Members of this linguistic council, allow me to proceed and answer the question, what then is the major cause? Members of this linguistic council, the unregulated disposal of these antibiotics is the major cause of this antibiotic resistance. Members of this linguistic council, to prove that I'm not a speaker who speaks from without but from within, may this please be passed to the judges for further verification. Another major cause, members of this linguistic council, is the toxicity in the environment. Members of this linguistic council, we will understand to say the environment is the mother body of the ecosystem. What does it mean? It means that it encompasses 80% of all the toxins that are being produced by humans, that are being produced by the same agriculture sector and the veterinary sector. Everything is deposited into the environment, and then you tell me the veterinary and the agriculture sector is the major cause. It is an insult to the 17 million Zambians that are watching this debate, members of this linguistic council. And for that, the government deserves 10 years imprisonment with hard labor. 30 seconds, summarize my speech.
You have 10 seconds.
Thank you very much, moderator. Members of this linguistic council, like I said, toxicity is the major cause of antibiotic resistance in the environment. Members of this linguistic council, as I leave this beautiful podium, I just want to tell the people out there, think twice, seek advice, or you will terribly pay the price. Thank you.
And now we just heard from the third speaker from Lusaka Apex Medical University. Lusaka Apex Medical University being the opposition. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to hear from the summarizers from each team. Now I'd like to remind the panelists that these shall not be interjected or injected at any point. The summarizer from the University of Zambia, Blessings Kasenge.
Want to go? Well, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Because what is worth living for is also worth dying for. As the University of Zambia Ridgeway campus, we choose to live and fight antimicrobial resistance. Members of the House and affiliates of this debate session, you cannot swim for new horizons until you have courage to lose sight of the shore. Allow me to take you to a place more pleasant than the horizons. I stand here proposing to the motion as paraphrased. Using antibiotics too much and for the wrong reasons in plants and animals is the most important and #1 cause of antimicrobial resistance. Before I digest this motion further and make it absorbable, allow me to pay my gratitude to the following cardinals who have made this debate session nothing but a success. The preeminent chairperson, I salute. The panel of adjudicators, I salute. May I simply say, all protocols observed. Members of the House and affiliates of this session, an old saying goes that one with a big head cannot avoid punches. The fight against antibiotic resistance is a fight we cannot avoid but tackle with aggression, and this fight begins with identifying the major cause of resistance. According members of the House to the World Health Organization, approximately 80% of the total consumption of medically important antibiotics is in the animal sector, meaning the 20% is shared by the human sector and the environmental sector they are talking about. Allow me, members of the House, to add paraffin to this fire by quoting from an article dated 9th November 2017 by the REACT Africa on antimicrobial resistance, and I quote, "However, the use of antibiotics for food production has been a major driver of antibiotic resistance. The use of antibiotics in food production has been a major cause of resistance. The question, members of the House, then is, what is bringing antibiotic resistance? To answer this question, allow me to add cement to this structure that I'm already building by quoting from a PowerPoint presentation by Mainda on food safety challenges here in Zambia, presented at the School of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Zambia. And I quote, "Multi-drug resistance is brought about by various factors such as uncontrolled use of antibiotics for purposes such as growth promotion, prophylaxis, or therapeutics, and improper administration." Dignified members of this chamber, in the human sector, antibiotics are not used for growth promotion, unless someone here can tell me that they've been given antibiotics to boost their growth. We can clearly see the misuse in the veterinary and in the agriculture sector. How then are we still disputing that these sectors are the major drivers of antibiotic resistance? We find antibiotics in the meat products that we eat, in the vegetables that we eat. Members of the House, can we compare the number of times we eat to the number of times we go to the hospitals? Definitely not. We consume antibiotics every day. How then can we dispute the major influence of these two sectors? In fact, members of the House, may I bring to your attention that according to a study done here in Zambia, right here in Lusaka province by Kunda and others, of the 83 farms that they surveyed, 25 farms had cattle producing milk that was contaminated with antibiotic residues. The study further reviewed, members of the House, that at least 17% of the milk samples bought from supermarkets here in Lusaka had antibiotic residues. And the conclusion of this study, members of the House, was that farmers were not using antibiotics correctly. Allow me to hit the nail on the head, members of the House, by quoting from another study by Mainda and others on the prevalence and patterns of antimicrobial resistance. The study revealed that 41,280 kgs of antibiotics were dispensed from the major supplier in 1 year. This study only included 6 districts. Extrapolate it to the 118 districts that we have here in Zambia. Members of the House, can we say that the human sector is the major contributing factor? Definitely not. Members of the House, compared to the human sector, little is being done to fight antibiotic resistance in the veterinary and in the agriculture sector. Allow me, members of the House, to show you that I'm not only quoting information from the previous generation, but this is current information. Allow me to quote from the prescribed activities of Zambia's multi-sectoral national action plan of antimicrobial resistance of August 2019. Beginning of quote. Further, in comparison to the human sector, greater challenges in the National Action Plan implementation will be faced by the animal, agriculture, and environmental sectors due to 1. Limited understanding, lack of guidance, and lack of preparedness to address AMR in these sectors. These 3 sectors are mentioned. If we put the human sector on one side of the pendulum and the veterinary and the agriculture sector on the other side of the pendulum, clearly the pendulum will swing towards the veterinary and the agriculture sector because there's limited understanding, there's lack of guidance, and there's lack of preparedness. 15 minutes to summarize.
You have 15 seconds.
15 seconds to summarize. Members of the House, allow me to quote from the top news items in Zambia dated 2nd September 2018, which reveal that in the veterinary sector, there's no council to regulate the work of the health professionals, whilst in the human sector, we have the SPCZ that regulates the functions of the health professions. Members of the House, allow me to submit my implementation. Number 1, we need to vaccinate our animals. We need to improve awareness and sensitization. With these 2 points, I rest my case.
Indeed, we always save the best for last. That was a summarizer from the University of Zambia Ridgeway Campus, Kasenge Blessings M. And I'll call upon the summarizer from Lusaka Apex Medical University, Joseph K. Musonda Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Too much use, wrong use, is the major cause of the antimicrobials to resist treatment. Oh my God. Members of the House, the most important tactic in an argument next to being right is to leave an escape hatch for your opponent to swing over to your side without an embarrassing of your face. Members of the House, this is a debate about our understanding of antimicrobial resistant, rather antibiotic resistant. What it means to be a member of the human family, even though tiny and powerless and unwanted. Therefore, allow me to observe the protocol of debate in its chronological order by simply saying the protocol of debate is highly observed. As the chief whip of the opposition, it is my duty to invalidate the misconceptual statements made by the government and cement on the points raised by our opposition. Afterwards, I will offer recommendations, rather solutions to this challenge, so as a nation we can move in one accord. Members of the House, the first speaker came here to say 70% of antibiotics are being used in the veterinary and agricultural sector. We do understand that, but we need to remember what is the ratio of human to animal population, members of the House. Therefore, it is insane for us to say there's too much use of antibiotics in the veterinary sector when the human sector is actually lower in terms of population according to the animal sector. At the rest of the nation, the second speaker came and asked the question to say, how are we going to blame the human sector? We are not blaming the human sector. Rather, we are offering to say, these are the major challenges. Therefore, if we ignore the major challenges, we will not fight this challenge that we have, which is antibiotic resistance. Therefore, members of the House, the third speaker came and said, access to antibiotics. Yes, that's what we are talking about. There is access to antibiotics, not just in the veterinary, but even in the human sector. Therefore, this falls under the major reasons why antibiotic resistance is a challenge in this country. Members of the House, the largest and leading cause of antibiotic resistance is the natural phenomenon. That we understand, because bacteria, the way of surviving, they've developed that tenders to change, or rather should I say, mutate, so that they can survive. Not because the antibiotics, even just in the presence of heat, they can mutate. And when you give them antibiotics, what happens? They've developed resistance. Therefore, members of the House, we also need to understand among the factors now that are propagating the resistance, this now where human behavior has to fall. Now, what is this human behavior that I'm talking about, members? If I give an example of TB, TB has nothing to do with the veterinary or whatsoever. TB basically has everything to do with non-compliance by who? The consumers, should I say, the patients. Most of these patients are not complying with the treatment plan that are being offered to them. Not because we've administered antibiotics to the dogs or to the pigs or to the chickens' feed, members of the House. Members, we need to understand to say, humans only think and reason with logic if whatever topic that is being debated does not challenge their belief system. Therefore, human behavior towards antibiotics, especially among consumers, has contributed greatly to antibiotic resistance via self-prescription. Is one major cause that we need to pay attention to, members of the House. And we should never ignore this. Over-the-counter drugs that we are giving to these people is another major cause that has contributed to this antibiotic resistance. And if we continue ignoring these factors, we will not fight this. We do not refuse to say overuse and misuse in these sectors are not contributing. We do acknowledge that. But it is not the major. And we will say it is not the major. Therefore, the government is misleading the nation. And for that, they need to be put in order. By who? The opposition and the 17.5 million Zambians that are watching this debate, members of the House. Misconception that antibiotics work on flu and cold, when 99% of these are caused by what? Viruses, and viruses are self-limiting, members of the House. And because we are using antibiotics for such flu cold, it is another reason why antibiotic resistance is moving forward, members of the House. We need to understand to say the loss of this resistance in the environment is slow. We've seen the resistance that was developed to penicillin years ago, but up to now it's still there. Not because they're using antibiotics, but because the resistance loss is slow, members of the House. This is a fact that we need to acknowledge. Maybe the good Samaritan, please pass this concrete to the panel of adjudicators. Members of the House, even countries that have strict measures on the use of antibiotics in the vet, such as the European countries, are still leading on the antimicrobial resistance. With me here is evidence proving to that. And today we are saying the overuse is the main cause. Oh, Mother Zambia. Members of the House, it will be unfair and unwise of me. May the person please give me 15 seconds wind up.
You have 10 seconds.
Thank you. It will be unwise of me to move out without offering recommendation solutions to this dilemma. We need to understand that never share or use leftover antibiotics. Please practice good hygiene habits such as washing hands after using the toilet. To the health workers, please only prescribe antibiotics that are necessary according to the current trends. May the good Lord please pass this recommendation to the panel of educators. With these few points, I say think twice, seek advice, or indeed take the prize.
House of Affiliates. That was a summarizer from Lusaka, Apex Medical University, Joseph K. Musonda Jr. And now, with that said and done, this was the final of the 2019 World Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Week debate held here at Apex Medical University. Battle it out. The motion at hand was overuse and misuse of antibiotics in the veterinary and agriculture sector is the major cause of antibiotic resistance. For Lusaka Apex Medical University, we had Luito Silimba, Vida Kavaza, Alfred Lingozo, Joseph K. Musonda Jr. For the University of Zambia Ridgeway Campus, we had Chiluba Songiwe T. we had me and Jonathan, we had Mayembe Jiwotu, and Kasenge Blessings M. With that said and done, we will now leave it to the judges for further jurisdiction. Hughes Chakulanta Jr. give us the results. But then before he gives us the results, I would like to remind the House that this debate was made possible by the National Antimicrobial Resistance Coordinating Committee. With that said,
good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'll just go straight to the point due to time. To announce the best speaker and the second best speaker for the 2019 AMRA debate tournament. The second speaker is none other than Joseph Musonda from Apex Medical. The overall best speaker for this debate is none other than Blessings. Now, the most important thing that we've been waiting for, to crown the 2019 AMRA debate champion.
Okay, so you guys, when they announce you guys know each other, but people on TV don't know you. So each time they announce whoever the best is, you stand.
Overall results as we crown the 2019 champions. The runners-up scored a total points of 630. The runners-up scored 630, while the winners scored 640. Just a minor difference of 10. The winners scored a total points of 640. Ladies and gentlemen, crowning the 2019 AMRA debate champions. Let's put our hands together for the University of
Zambia, Apex Medical University. I believe congratulations are in order as well. You guys put up a pleasant display. Congratulations. Congratulations, University of Zambia. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to a close of the 2019 World Antimicrobial Resistance Awareness Week debate. In the final, we have UNZA being crowned as the champion. With that said, good afternoon.